Star Wars Outlaws marked an important return of non-EA developed Star Wars video games, the first of its kind in over a decade. And, well, it's not perfect by any means, the mixed reviews will tell you that. It marked an important shift for the IP. It's an expansion of the possibilities for what we could get in the future. According to reports, Lucasfilm Games wants 2 releases per year, one big and one smaller, as seen with Star Wars Outlaws and Hunters in 2024. But what's the pipeline looking like for the future? From the conclusion of one of the best Star Wars game series to date, to an ambitious dive into a new genre, and the remake of an all-time classic, today we're going over every single upcoming Star Wars video game. Although Respawn Entertainment's Star Wars first-person shooter, rumored to be a Mandalorian game, was cancelled, they still have another big one in the chamber. That, of course, is Jedi III, the final game in the series and threequel to Jedi Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor. Jedi III will also be the final installment in the series. This was confirmed during EA's Investor Relations Day, where the president of EA said, quote, "Respawn is working hard to bring the final chapter of this thrilling story to players." Now, this doesn't necessarily mean the end of Cal Kestis. Cameron Monaghan has been vocal in the past about wanting to bring the character to live action, an opportunity Lucasfilm would be crazy to pass on. However, this absolutely needs to come after the third Jedi game's release. As to not spoil Cal's fate in the unnamed game, we should be on the edge of our seats wondering if he'll survive, not questioning how he gets to a surprise cameo in the Mandalorian movie. The next Jedi game will almost certainly take place closer to the events of the original trilogy, and most likely will explore the mythical planet Tanalorr, which we discovered in Jedi Survivor. Nothing concrete is known about the plot yet, but Jedi Survivor did include some major character developments for Cal Kestis. He tapped into the dark side, admitted feelings for Merrin, and lost his master. There's plenty to build off of here. In terms of a potential release date for Star Wars Jedi III, there isn't much to go off, unfortunately. We know that it's still deep in the development stage, so 2026 seems most likely, but who knows? Maybe they'll surprise us and we'll get Jedi III in late 2025. The other question is what the title of the third Jedi game could be. I'd love to see your suggestions in the comments. The third game in the Jedi series isn't the only Star Wars title Respawn Entertainment are cooking up, as they're also working on a tactical strategy game in collaboration with BitReactor, the veteran developers of XCOM, the Sid Meier's Civilization series, Gears of War, and The Elder Scrolls Online. And by the way the developers are talking about it, this game has the potential to perhaps become the best Star Wars RTS of all time, perhaps even surpassing Empire at War, which, by the way, came out in 2006. This is long overdue. This project will likely be smaller in scale than other Star Wars games like the Jedi series, but it's nice to see Lucasfilm Games diversify into something a little more niche. But don't let that deter you from giving this game a fair shot when it comes out, as the developers are intent on making it easy enough for those who don't play strategy games to grasp. In a recent interview with PC Gamer, BitReactor's technical director Ryan McFall said, quote, "I think there's definitely a perception there. I think folks have a limited view of what a strategy game could be. That is one of the things we want to try to do, expand people's perception of what the experience actually is of playing a strategy game." The development team has cited Baldur's Gate 3 as an example, a strategy-adjacent game that overcame its perception and now has a very good shot at winning Game of the Year. In terms of concrete details about the game, there's almost nothing out there. The same can be said about a potential release date, but personally, this is the one I'm most excited about after Jedi III. I think it has the potential to be sneaky good. Perhaps the most ambitious Star Wars game in development right now is Star Wars Eclipse. First announced at the 2021 edition of the Game Awards, Eclipse is an action-adventure game developed by Quantic Dream. the studio behind titles like Detroit Become Human. The reason Eclipse is so ambitious is because the game will feature multiple playable characters, each with their own stories and abilities. The various branching stories will lead to different experiences for each player. No two playthroughs will be the same. Eclipse will take place in the Outer Rim during the High Republic era, the same time period as The Acolyte. Quantic Dream describes the player experience as, quote, "Choices have consequences. Every decision you make can have dramatic repercussions on your journey, alter your relationships, the locations you visit, the battles you fight, and even the fate of the characters themselves. The way of life in the Outer Rim is being threatened, and you must define your path. Become the architect of a devastating war, a peacemaker who will restore balance, or something else altogether." Now, this all sounds great, but unfortunately Eclipse is still far from release. Its rumored window is between 2027 and 2030. Now, it's probably best they take their time with developing Eclipse to avoid a situation like what happened with Cyberpunk 2077. Unfortunately, there have been reports of trouble at the developer with hiring and engine-related struggles, but hopefully they are able to push through this, because honestly, this game sounds awesome. Recently, we've seen a trend of older Star Wars games receiving remasters. Aspyr have released the Battlefront Classic Collection and Star Wars Bounty Hunter, with Episode 1 Jedi Power Battles next up, set for a January 2025 release date. Night Dive Studios also brought us a remaster of 1995's Dark Forces back in February. But there's a bigger remake that's been in the works for a few years, and that's Knights of the Old Republic. After a killer reveal teaser trailer featuring Darth Revan released in late 2021, things went radio silent on the game. Reports soon surfaced that Aspyr was having difficulty with it, so it was passed over to Saber Interactive. That's the company behind the massively successful Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2. So, there is still a reason for optimism. Knights of the Old Republic recently received a Nintendo Switch port, and the PC version still receives updates, but a remake with improved graphics and gameplay would be huge. This remake alone could prove to Disney and Lucasfilm just how popular the Old Republic era is, while allowing Star Wars fans who haven't played the original game to experience an improved version. Who knows? Maybe an Old Republic movie or show could even follow it. If you've been paying close attention to Star Wars games that have gone in and out of development over the last decade or so, you may remember one called Project Ragtag, an action-adventure game once in the works by EA's Visceral Games studio, the team behind the Dead Space series. That game was ultimately cancelled, but its spirit seems to still be alive, now in the works at Skydance New Media. Interestingly enough, Skydance New Media is led by Amy Hennig, who was originally leading the development of Project Ragtag. She brings an impressive resume highlighted by the Uncharted series, for which she served as game director, head writer, and creative director. The new Star Wars game is described as a narrative-driven action-adventure, with leaks pointing to it taking place during the era of the Rebel Alliance. At one point, the story of Project Ragtag reportedly focused on a group of criminals, but this made its way into Ubisoft's Star Wars Outlaws, so it's likely to have taken a different direction, despite remaining in the action-adventure genre. With all of these projects still in what seems to be the early stages of development, that target of 2 per year set by Lucasfilm Games seems like wishful thinking, but it's pretty clear that opening the Star Wars license to developers beyond EA was the smart move. Hopefully it pays off, and soon.